And so it is, we welcome our dear friend David Schroeder, who presented at the January conference, and he's stepping up tonight with a nice topic. David is a clinical and spiritual social worker and professional life coach. He has 30 years experience in the human development fields, and in his private practice, transition pathways. David offers a variety of techniques to assist individuals and couples and groups in finding healthy pathways to love, higher awareness, and greater potential. He conducts workshops and retreats on topics such as just be loved, the soul's journey, spirituality, and self-esteem, the pathway to conscious relationships, and the power of being. And David is also the author of a book as well. And that book is Love, the Divine Attributes, and actually Just Be Love, Messages on the Spiritual and Human Journey. Today's topic, David presents Love, the Divine Attributes, and the Serenity Prayer, which we're looking very forward to hearing.
Good evening, all. Happy Sunday. Tonight's talk is entitled Love, the Divine Attributes, and the Serenity Prayer. It's actually one of the chapters in my book that I wrote a number of years ago. So there's some updated info in this at this time with this particular talk. So I'm going to be highlighting threes, the number 3. And as John is the expert in numerology, but I'll just give you a couple little tidbits of 3. There's the Trinity, the 3 parts of the Trinity. There's the 3 points of a triangle. There's 3 parts to life: birth, life, and death. And there seems to be a lot of 3s in different aspects of life. And 3 also is about complete and being perfect. And so it's a form of completion and perfection. So I'd like to look at, there's 3 divine attributes that are known as power, love, and wisdom. And many spiritual traditions, both religious and spiritual, around the world have come up with words to describe this power and this love and this wisdom. And the first word is omnipotent, which describes the allness of God's power. They use the word omnibenevolent to express the allness of God's love. And they use the word omniscient to describe God's all-knowing wisdom. Our human ego, the lower mind of us, struggles with the correct understanding and use of power, love, and wisdom. I found that there's 3 aspects or characteristics, if you will, that seem important in navigating through life. These are acceptance, courage, and discernment. These traits are also useful, I believe, in terms of the need for our spiritual advancement and spiritual awareness, and ultimately our personal and spiritual growth. And lastly, I found a connection a number of years ago between the divine attributes of power, love, and wisdom and the traits of acceptance and courage and discernment, and how these connect with the Serenity Prayer. And the common version of the Serenity Prayer goes as follows. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I'd like us to look at the three parts within the divine attributes of power, love, and wisdom, and the three parts of the Serenity Prayer, and how they connect with those traits of acceptance, courage, and discernment. So first, let's look at the first attribute of power and the first part of the Serenity Prayer. And by the way, the Serenity Prayer, even though it was adopted by AA groups back in the mid-40s, and many addiction programs have adopted this prayer, the reality is we can use this prayer in any aspect of our life. It's a prayer for all of us during certain times in our lives. So the attribute of power and the first part of the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. As humans, we often want control. We often don't like change. We struggle with uncertainty and the unknown. And we especially struggle with change that we didn't ask for or desire. And unfortunately, in the human journey, we can struggle with some tragedies and experiences in our life that we don't necessarily want or desire, but there they are nonetheless. Thus, we might use in this struggle and pain with change, loss and grief and such, we might use resistance or force against the change. And we want our life to go back to normal, back on our own terms and ways. The use of force, having our way, if you will, is not the right use nor true spiritual power. There is no peace with force. Force is driven by emotions such as fear, shame, anger, grief, even pride. And these are lower energies and forms of consciousness that will put us either in the victim, I hate myself, or the fighter energy of I hate you. True power I would entertain, and inner peace comes to surrender. The ability to be more neutral, to practice non-attachment, acceptance, and love with a dash of trust and higher knowing. Spiritual surrender, the ego's version of surrender, is about giving in, giving up. I'm going to lose. The spirit's version of surrender, it's not about giving in or giving up. It's true surrender is about letting go in order to gain or benefit. And in the dynamic of change, most people focus on what they fear they're going to lose or have to give up. And there's where the force of the resistance comes. The divine intent of power, I believe, is sovereignty, which means, to my way of thinking, to yield and accept the ways of the supreme authority, what I like to call the infinite one. Accept the things I cannot change. I let go of wanting it to be a certain way and accept what is. This is yielding to the power greater than ourselves. The willingness to accept and let go is where the inner peace and freedom and love truly resides. Acceptance of what is doesn't mean I like it or agree with it so much, but acceptance is a moving forward energy. And it helps pave the way to greater understanding and inner peace and a moving on with life, despite the unfortunate, perhaps even tragic circumstances. Thus, acceptance and the ability to surrender to the higher will and way is our true power. When you look at the world today, aspects of it anyways, and even in our own country, look at the ways that people have been using power. It's been a need for control and manipulation. Yet in the long run, a person ends up, that person that's obsessed with the wrong use, the ego-driven use for power and control, they often end up losing control of themselves in the long run. The ego seeks to play God rather than to yield to God. Only true power, the only true power is God. Our task, our quest, if you will, is to align with this power, to accept this power, to yield to it, not resist or try to override it. God grant me the serenity, the peace to accept the things I cannot change is the right use of power. The second divine attribute is love. And the second part of the Serenity prayer speaks of the courage to change when I can. In the dynamic of change, in its energy of change, many of us want others to accommodate us. I need you to be and do a certain way for my sense of worthiness and happiness. It takes no courage to want others to go your way. Reality is the only person I can really change and control is myself. And like I said, it's a no-brainer to want others to change and conform to our needs and our ways. And often needing others to change for our convenience is a form of blame and fear, not love. The willingness, however, to change ourselves, not the world, to change for us, I believe is true courage. And it's a sign and act if you will, of love, especially self-love. Gandhi said it well: be the change you want the world to be. The courage and the willingness to change from the inside out is love. Moving now to the third divine attribute and the third part of the Serenity prayer. Interesting that both these the last attribute and the last line of the prayer speaks of wisdom. The wisdom to know the difference. Wisdom is discernment, the ability to know what to accept and let go of, and what is mine to change. Wisdom to me is more than knowledge expressed with words. Wisdom resides in the silence. It listens, and it holds a higher perception. And wisdom dwells in the soul heart of us, arising from stillness, solitude. And when one can fast for 3 or 4 days, this really is a powerful way of illuminating the higher, wiser mind. In the world today, and it's been going on for centuries, it's really nothing new. But if you look at the ways people are trying to control each other, at the avoidance people are using, the loss of self-control, look at how they're needing to be right and proving others wrong, blaming each other, while not taking responsibility for their own thoughts, triggers, and actions. Look at the unconsciousness, the unloving and the uncaring ways that are driven by negative and distorted thoughts and beliefs about the individual and their world. Look at the individual and the collective greed that's going on by a few at the expense of many. Consider people who have power without love and wisdom become tyrants. Greed is power without love and wisdom. When true love and power, the right use of power, when that love and that power unites, wisdom is born. And wisdom gives a higher meaning to love and the concept of true power. Love will promote wisdom, which inspires us to take right action in right ways, to do no harm to others nor ourselves. And how we use wisdom, or how we use power, folks, is how we express love. And how we use wisdom will determine how we use power and evolve as love. In closing, let us celebrate and say yes to God and embrace the serenity to accept our Creator's ways. Let us pursue with the strength and the courage to change what we can. And to let go of what's not ours. And to know the difference of what to let go of and give to God, and what is truly mine to embrace and change from the inside out. I close with the spiritual wisdom of the rocker, and to me, one of the greatest guitarists, Jimi Hendrix. He said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Amen.
Thank you, David. Heartfelt and wonderful wisdom especially for this time. Spot on again. We've been like 3 weeks in a row with presentations at least, or at least that long. Been spot on for the times of our lives that are going through so much change right now. And scribbled some notes myself. You mentioned acceptance, courage, and there was a third one too that I wanted to jot down.
Discernment.
That's it. Yeah.
Which is wisdom. Yeah.
Wisdom. Using that discernment to get to a point where having the wisdom to know the difference. How do you discern that when there's difficult challenges in your life that come across us? And just to be generic, I suppose, with it at the moment, but what is your advice to folks that are using that discernment to have that wisdom to know the difference, to make a change with love?
Drink heavily. No, I do.
Play a lot of loud Jimmy.
That's where the importance of spending time, I think, in stillness and solitude, listening to the soft, still inner voice, not so much the loud, obnoxious voice. Patience is another key. And trusting that what does come eventually from the depths of you, to trust that and to allow that process to unfold. Letting go of the outcome, focus more on the process. When you're in the process, I believe the outcome will take care of itself. If we're trying to force, if we're in fear, we're going to be more outcome focused and oriented. When you're truly in a state of peace and love, you're more focused on the process. And many people who have that ability to discern, they speak and live and walk kind of softly. And so the ability just to slow the self down and truly listen and trust are crucial in that discernment process. And then the key then is just take the action that you're guided to take and trust that as best you can. That's my advice. Yeah.
Anyone else have comments, questions for David tonight?
Reverend Dr. Mitch Miller from Eastern Lower Michigan.
Having a hard time hearing you tonight. If you could turn up your volume a little.
Okay.
There you go.
Reverend Midge is on my cell phone. So I'm hoping you can hear her. Go ahead, Midge.
Hello, sending splendiferous salutations to everybody from northeastern Michigan. Our soul group is sending copious amounts of love and sincerity for unification on our planet. And what we're asking all to do is become more aware of our innate abilities to make change. And thank you, David, for saying the things that you have said, because it's so imperative that we understand we have the power of love to be able to make change. God bless us all. Thank you for this moment.
Thank you.
Well, there is one thing I'd like to bring up too is if we understand that we have the innate abilities to make change, we're working with the divine in this higher octave, and that 13th dimension that we're able to reach is going to come much sooner. Time is relevant. Okay.
Hey, David, this is Peter.
Hey, Pete.
How you doing? Great presentation, Dave. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Therese, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. I came up with a line in my head called "Love is the voice of God." Love is the voice of God.
Very true. Well put. Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you.
That's powerful, Pete.
Anyone else have a comment or a thought to share for David or a question?
I just want to mention how wonderful that talk was. And, I'm so sensitive to energies, and the energy vibration that came through your voice, was absolutely magnificent. And I feel that every one of us here felt that going into their heart and into their mind. And in itself, the presentation, the words are wonderful, but the energy that came off of it, I think, is a very good example of what it's like to be in that space of love and to recognize that this is what it feels like, so that when you are going through those challenges, to focus within and then begin to feel that sense again. When we've got those other issues going on, we do tend to look out here. But the quicker that we can get ourselves to take those issues and whatever it might be inward and look at it from that perspective, and that is really when the meaning changes of it. We get to understand it more deeply, why it's even in our life at this time. And with that, the more that you practice it, you do tend to get that sense of peace as you're going through that, and finding yourself with that ebb and flow of what it is that you need to learn from it. So thank you so much for the wonderful words, because they're wonderful, but also thank you for the energy that it projected out in, I think, to the audience.
Thank you, Orton. Thank you.
I also wanted to say thank you for your absolutely wonderful wisdom and the reminding us the importance of the power of love, and that we all have that power. So it's just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula, go ahead, please.
I wanted to say that was a very excellent and helpful talk. I guess the biggest question or comment I have is about the acceptance of things we can't change, because I was thinking about this afternoon, And I think for me, it's hard to accept something when sometimes I feel like life is unfair. And, how do I deal with that? It's not because, I know that our thoughts create our world. So we create our thinking creates what's going on. So if we don't like it, we should change it. But I guess when I think about, in particular, health challenges, I'm a juvenile onset diabetic. So it's hard for me to believe that as a young child, I attracted illness into my life. So that's one of these things that I'm having a hard time sometimes accepting. I mean, I do. It's where I am, and I deal with it the best I can. But I guess I struggle sometimes with feeling guilty that I have an illness. I kind of think changing the things I can involve all the care I take care of myself, and the fact that insulin pumps have been invented and that kind of thing. But again, sometimes I struggle with the fact that life is unfair and I have this illness. I don't know. What suggestions do you have for how I should look at that?
So I'll give you, number one, acceptance is a big key. I'm deaf in one ear and can't hear out the other. My job as a therapist, I was born that way. My job as a therapist was to hear, but I can't listen, it's to listen, but I can't hear. When you accept your imperfections, what you deem as your disability or your imperfection, you turn them into your gifts and or your strengths. The other thing I would suggest, the injustice, we will say, why me? Life isn't fair. We've all been there to a degree. The aspect of grief and loss will often take us into that why me, poor me mindset and belief system. The key in all that is to shift that and ask, why not me? What am I to learn? What is this illness or disease or tragedy? What is it asking me to do? How can it make me a better person, a better lover, a more compassionate and forgiving person? To me, those are two keys of the wound of injustice. And you've developed the wound of injustice and the belief of injustice in order to reconcile it to a higher understanding and knowing of yourself and who you really are in human form, but yet as an eternal soul.
Can I, go ahead, Carl, I have
Yes,
something to say also.
I would like to comment. Paula, in my experience, the chances are really great that you planned your diabetes when you planned your life, wrote your script for this lifetime. And you put it there, as you have said, David, for your own learning, to learn from it. And once you have the learning, there's no logical reason for it to continue. It may well dissipate, or at least you will be comfortable living with it. And I suspect it may be there also, once you have your learning, to share your learning with other people who have similar afflictions.
Can I add to that also? Because I'm also someone that has had issues ever since they were a child. And at first I also felt guilty. Why do I have this? Why can't I get rid of it? And doing everything under the sun to try it, and get rid of it. And there was a point in my life where I realized there's more to this than I realized. There is more to this than I realized. And once that was a letting go. And once I let go, then I realized that this was not just for me. the things that we experience when they are health-wise or however, they are here for us to learn from, to grow from, to teach from, but also that we are assisting others that we don't even know about. Because everything that occurs in your life and everything that you accomplish in your life gets put like in your Akashic record, but it also gets put in the Akashic record of the planet. And then those others similar to what you have, if they come up, when they come along, because you've added the love and so on to it already with your knowledge and wisdom, they'll be able to tap into that, because we're all tapping into things all around us all the time. They can tap into that and they can recognize that they're okay too, you know, once they've done their work and learned what they needed to learn. And then they also add to that consciousness, because everything we have, whatever, if it's an illness, whatever it might be, it's all vibration. And that's all we're really here for, is to understand vibration and be in harmony with vibration. So that helped me to move beyond that, in a sense, feeling guilty, or why do I still have this? I have this because it is, like Carl said, it's something that I chose to be assisting the planet with. Because no matter what we are doing, we are assisting the planet to be uplifted. With all of the trials and tribulations, we have everything. It's helping to move us more and more into that space of love, light, peace, and joy.
And Paula, um,
Paula, if I can just put this more in a capsule, and I would ask you to fasten your seatbelt when I say this, because for most people, this is a hard pill to swallow. But on the level of soul, in the spiritual realm, nothing happens to us. Everything happens for us and through us. And when you can really embrace that and accept that and work with that, you learn how to manage the illness, the disorder, whatever, perhaps even, like, you know, Carl Orton said, overcome it. But for sure, you learn how to manage it much more than it managing you.
and
So.
Paula, I think you bringing this to the forefront is just an example of the universe working for us.
I think I have a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I was just going to say, I think I have a story that can help show another side of all this. I definitely agree with what everyone's saying as far as the challenges in life can be tools to help us learn and grow. And it's like any kind of exercise. Without some kind of resistance, we never get stronger, we never get better. And it is working through these challenges that we grow as a person. But in terms of, well, before I get to the story, in terms of accepting something that is, you kind of already know where my focus is. I'm on overcoming the world, manifesting our visions into reality, and changing what is into what we want it to be. But even in that process, there's still this recognition of this situation that I want to change is here now. And even though I intend to change it, it is still a factor of today. And so there's the temporary acceptance. We don't have to accept it as a permanent thing, but we can accept it as a temporary thing that may eventually clear up and go away and change and that type of thing. But the story that I wanted to share, some of you guys have already heard this, but back, let's see, it's probably been 25, at least 25 years ago. But at 25 to 30 years ago, I was a type of person who felt like life was very unfair. It seemed like everything in my life was going wrong. And it seemed that there were so many decisions that people around me were making that affected me negatively in ways that I didn't see any logical reason for it. So it seemed like life was very much unfair to me. And I was very frustrated by that. In fact, I went beyond frustration and really got into anger very, very often. In fact, at one point, I have mentioned that at one time I was a champion angry person because I could do it better than anybody else. And really, it was so much a pattern for me. It was so much of a habit that I could be sitting alone at home and then just think of something that wasn't right in my life, and I would go off into a rage all by myself. So I was so much into anger, and that was so much of what my life was like at that time. And this was after I'd already learned about the power of our mind and the power that we send out into the world is going to come reflected back to us. And finally, it sunk in that, hey, I'm probably the one creating all of the unfairness in my life. And so I decided to make a change. I had had enough. I'd reached that enough is enough point. And I said, okay, I need to get a hold of this. I need to take control of this. I need to take control of myself and find a way to change this. So what I did was I just set aside as much time as I could. I would sit and I would try to focus on the idea of love. And I would try to remember sometime, some event in my life that I actually felt love. And I would try to spend as much time in that memory as I could. And of course, the first time I sat down to do this, it only lasted maybe 5 minutes or so. And then I was remembering something that was wrong. And I was off into a rage again that lasted probably for about an hour before I realized, wait a minute, I'm away from where I wanted to be. I need to get back to that love again. And so I just kept going back to it over and over and over again. And eventually it got easier to stay into that emotional space. And after a period of 2 or 3 weeks, and getting to a point where I could sit in a meditation and be in that emotion of love for a more extended period of time, the thing that I noticed very, very dramatically was that my luck changed. Before that point, I was definitely following Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong at the worst possible moment. After that experience, for at least the month following that, it was the exact opposite. Anything that could go right did. And it just completely changed my experience of life by shifting my focus away from anger into love. And that just completely changed my entire experience of life. And as far as David's answer to Michael, as far as how do you get that discernment, I think you said drink a lot or something like that. My response is get drunk on love.
Yeah.
Because if you can get into that love and get into this blissful state of everything is absolutely wonderful, that can change so much. And if you spend enough time there, then you develop a close connection with that divine mind. And then that's where you get access to that divine wisdom. And when you are in connection with that divine, then that discernment, accept the things I cannot change, have the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That part of the serenity part, the wisdom to know the difference, it doesn't come from our conscious minds. It doesn't even come from our memory. It comes from that connection with the divine mind. And the more that we develop that relationship with the divine by spending time in love and other positive emotional states and trusting, believing that there is that connection and that we can call upon that connection when needed, and let that connection, let that divine mind guide us whenever we have a decision to make. It's like, do I go left? Do I go right? It's like, okay, I'm open to this. Okay, I'm feeling left. Okay, I'm going to go left. Just follow that divine guidance by getting into the love and letting that guide you.
You know, you just said something so beautiful. You explained surrender. And surrender is where we get our gift.
Yep. Yep, that
Thank you
is
so
surrender
much.
to the divine.
I'd like to add that which we resist persists. And so if you could be actually thankful and grateful for the fact that this is something in your life, as a result of it, something really, really great is going to happen to you. But it is when that time of surrender comes.
My mother had that prayer on her wall as long as I can remember, but we never talked about it. But you don't really, you have to grow up and get older before you can understand it and deal with it. And it wasn't until I was at least in my 30s that I realized, you know, that a particular problem I was dealing with. Oh, I had that. I use that now as it made me empathetic to other people with problems. That takes my eyes off of my problem. And of course it's helpful, and it's helpful for me and the other person. And anyway, it became a very much of a plus thing, just using it once in that way, as it gave me empathy, and lots of people aren't able to have empathy.
Well, it's
And
a catharsis for you too, you know,
yeah,
to realize
yeah,
that.
right. It gave me a purpose for having had that problem. That problem, you know, gave me something that was good for me. I learned from it. So it was,
Thank you so much for sharing that in the time today. It is wonderful. I'm
Yeah,
going
I'd like to.
myself, and I'm just waiting with what the surrendering can do for us. Loving beyond reason, just because there is love, utilizing its effect and loving beyond reason.
Yeah, Paula, I have another thought for you here. This is a technique that I use. I've had a hellacious last year, health-wise. And when I get the feeling negative or depressed or sorry for myself, I immediately switch to gratitude. Thank you for all of the things that I can do. And that gets my mind off of the things that I can no longer do. And it works beautifully for me. Thank you.
And I'd like to say, think of the little boy who opens the door and he sees road apples on the sidewalk. And he looks, and instead of getting upset because somebody threw something on his sidewalk, he looks and he says, "Where's the pony? Look for something. Look for something good. There's a reason for this to be there. There may be something beautiful that you're not seeing because you're getting blinded by looking at it with a different attitude."
Attitude and gratitude. With infinite love and gratitude ahead of time.
The gratitude. Mm-hmm.
Thank you to everybody that we got in touch with today. This is wonderful. You made my day, my evening. I'm gonna sleep like a baby tonight.
Boy, this evening was extraordinary. It was just sensational. I want to congratulate everybody who shared their marvelous wisdom. It was truly life-changing, because we all came together in what I call a mastermind, and really shared so many things. And truly, I think it was life-changing. Truly, I do. And I want to thank everybody that just presented tonight. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best.
It takes one to know one.
John, you're our teacher.
Yeah.
We've learned from you.
I've learned from you too, believe me, big time.
Yep.
Tonight was one of the biggest. True.
But I read the line in the book, John, where it talked about humble. I think your name was right after it.
That's right.
Love to you. Very humble.
Well, thank you, Dave.
So
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, everybody.
you bet. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
David.